You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey there YouTube, Dapper Dinosaur here. So I am here with a Blender tutorial on how to prepare dice with embossed numbers for 3D printing. This is for Science Side Up, or Maddie, and she asked me to do this because she was having trouble getting the numbers onto the 3D model of her dice. So I'm assuming that, like her, you were able to add primitives of various, polyhedra that will work for dice. Once you're there though, how do you get the numbers on the dice? Well, I'm going to show you two techniques. So, like I said, Blender 2.93.2, doesn't matter really which version of Blender you use, this will work on any of them as far as I know. And for once, we're going to use the default cube. So first, we're going to split this because we're going to need a UV editor. Next, I'm going to hit Tab, go into Edit Mode, U for the UV mapping. I'm going to reset. Next thing I'm going to do is open an image. This one happens to be on my desktop. It is this D6 numbers. So you're going to want to prepare just a sheet with all the numbers that you need. Open this up. I'm going to hit A here to select all my faces. SX to scale this down on the X-axis until it looks pretty square. It doesn't need to be exact because no one's going to be able to tell the difference between your numbers looking like this and looking slightly stretched in one direction because no one knows what font you're using in the first place. I'm using one with very straight edges. This is the easiest kind of font to use. You don't have to. So next I'm going to hit S here in the UV window, and I'm going to scale all of these down so that the sides have mostly the number, but with a fairly decent margin. Okay. There we go. So the next thing I'm going to do, change this to face select, and I'm also going to turn on this UV sync selection. And then I'm going to go to, I'm going to split this, go to the shader editor, and I'm going to import that texture. So, image texture, by the way, Shift A is to add new things. This is a hotkey that works throughout all of Blender. Connect this to here, and switch on look dev mode so I can actually see what's going on. Okay. Now, this isn't really necessary for my texture, but it might be for yours. So what Extend does is just takes these border pixels and extends them indefinitely. So if I hit G to translate these UVs, no matter how far down I go, it's just white because that's what the edge of that texture is. It's by default set to repeat, which means that this image will tile infinitely. You can see the difference here. The reason I'm recommending you go to, from repeat to extend is because this way, if for some reason you have to have a UV that's hanging out like this because of just the way that you're sizing your UVs and the way your numbers are laid out, it won't end up sampling from the top of the image or from the other side or something like that. Okay. In case you don't know, one of the rules of dice is that traditionally the two opposite sides of a die will have numbers that add up to one more than the number of faces on the die. So I'm going down here to grab 6 because I just put 1 on top. And then this is an eyeball thing, right? Like just center it how you think it best looks centered. There you go. So I'm going to come here. This can be 5. That's fine. But that means this has to be 2. So we'll bring this up to be 2. Okay, then if that's 5 and 2, this can be 4. And that makes this 3. Okay. Now, I'm going to use the number pad here to set my view to be exactly on top. So that's 7. Now, with still in edit mode, I'm going to hit K. K is the knife tool. It will let you slice up any mesh. It's really handy for circumstances like this, because we're just going to click on every corner. And it doesn't matter that much that it's not exact. Because again, no one knows exactly how it's supposed to look in the first place except for you. So what that means is it's going to look however you think it's going to look. Now we're going to hit vertex select to make it easier to see where all our vertices are. And we're going to start making some connections down to the side here just to make it a little bit easier to apply things like modifiers. So we are going to use a couple modifiers. So just, whoa, Shift middle mouse drag is going to be moving you. Remember, every time you finish making your cuts, hit enter to actually lock those choices in. And then we're going to drag from here to here. Okay, now we're going to come down here to this 2. I'm going to do the same thing, although I can hit 1 to go to that 2. So K, here, here, here. So I think you get this. This is not terribly complicated. And I'm not being super exact because I'm not actually planning on using this. And also, like I said, it doesn't really matter all that much because you're the only one who knows. Okay, hit enter. Now I have these points. Once again, I'm going to start connecting them up. So enter, K, go here. All right. I forgot to get this one down here, so we're going to get that down here. Take you, go here. Now, this step here isn't strictly necessary. It just makes it a little bit easier to predict what's going to happen. Triangles, in this case, are really not a problem. Feel free to make as many triangles as you want, because when we're done, we're going to be going to triangles anyway. The only thing to be worried about with triangles is that they may interrupt some of your bevel processes, but that really shouldn't be too big of a problem. And besides, maybe you don't want to bevel these dice. I don't know. They're not my dice, they're yours. You're the one 3D printing them. Okay, so now we have this set up. A little bit of triangle, mostly quads. That's fine. Let's do this 4. So I'm going to hit 3. That brings me to the side view. By the way, if you want to switch to the other side, or whatever view you're in, 9 does that. So if you're on top view with 7, hit 9, goes to bottom view. Front view with 1, hit 9, goes to back view. This is the right side view with 3, get left side view. So there you go. So now I'm on side view. I'm going to hit Alt-A to deselect everything I already have selected, and we're going to click on the corners of this 4. I'm only doing half the sides because once you get the technique down, it is, I mean, it's just kind of tedious, but you have to go through all the other sides and keep doing this. Okay. So there we go. Select this up a little bit. Make sure if you have a number like this, you also click through any interior faces like this, because you're going to want those to not get removed. Okay. Make a little triangle. Like I said, doesn't really matter. Here's a quad. Let's go here. Go here. Let's do from here to here, and then to here. Okay, and then we'll do this. Okay, so next you're going to hit this face select, Alt-A to deselect everything, and then you're just going to select the faces that are part of the number. So I'm using black text on white background, so only the faces that are coming in black. Oh, we forgot to break this one up, so I'm going to break it up now. Again, like I said, it's really not vital that you break up these interior numbers, but it can make it a little bit easier for Blender to figure out what's going on. So, do that, and then let's see. Okay, so we have these selected. I'm going to hit Alt-S, and then -0.1. Oh, I forgot to do one thing. First, we're going to hit E. E to extrude, and then I'm just going to right-click to set them back where they were. Then I'm going to hit Alt-S, -0.1. Okay, now these are embossed, so that's great. That's what we want. Okay, so next we're going to go back, tab back into edit mode, choose Edge Select. We are going to select all of these edges around the outside of the die. So I'm using Shift and right-click to select. All right, double check to make sure you have all of them. One way you can do this is go to wireframe mode, see if you have them selected. All right, do you have any extra lines selected that you don't want? I don't think so. Go back into solid view. I'm going to hit Control B. Control B bevels. So we're going to drag this out to be where we want it. And then I'm going to mouse wheel up to increase the number of cuts. I'm going to go for 5. I like to go with odd numbers just because I like to have a line in the middle. It doesn't really matter. I just like it. So we're going to left click to lock that selection in. Now we have 3 sides. And again, you just complete the function for the other 3 sides and it'll work out. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a modifier that's a bevel modifier. And that will just ever so slightly bevel out our numbers. You can see that right here. So depending on how big you want to print these out, that might make a difference. We're going to stick with just one segment right now. It's not very important. But we are going to apply this, and then we're going to use the triangulate modifier. And we are going to apply that. So now this is all made out of triangles, which is what your computer is probably going to be looking for. Now, it's not the prettiest, but I mean, depending on how you want to do things, you can also hit, say, Control-2, subdivide it. I don't want to do that. This will work out pretty well. If you want these rounded edges to be smoother, just scroll your mouse wheel up more when we're subdividing. And yeah, now everything is divided into triangles. And this is ready to export as an STL file. So that's the first technique, which I think is a really good technique. It's going to give you pretty good results. Is back to here. Apply UV so you get a template. Cut the numbers. Connect them up so that the geometry isn't too bad. Bevel manually. Do another bevel if you want on the numbers. You don't have to. And then apply all your modifiers and then use a triangulate modifier just to make sure everything is working with triangles. You can come up here if you want and hit shade smooth. It doesn't really matter where you'd even go. Others. So yeah, that is going to get you an embossed die. And if for some reason you feel like you want it to look good in Blender, which it doesn't matter, you can go over to this here. What is this? What is this even called? Object data properties. Okay. You can go to normals and hit auto smooth, and that'll just look a little bit nicer in the viewport. Also, if you're working on a lot of intricate stuff, you want to keep track a little bit easier. One little tip is you can come over here to this guy here, the camera, which is render properties, turn on ambient occlusion, open that from the drop down menu. Now here where it says factor, this goes from 0 to 1, except here's a secret about Blender. You can generally type in whatever you want and it will do it. If we go back over to look dev mode and we get rid of this guy, so this you can see is giving you basically like a cavity map. So yeah, just because Blender looks like it has a maxed out value, it doesn't mean it actually has a maxed out value. And in fact, sometimes you can even go into negative numbers. Now this is completely off topic, but it's fun anyway. Watch this. I'm going to go to rendered view. I'm going to take this light here. I'm going to duplicate it. Now, the strength on light, if I go over here to the strength properties, only goes down to 0, right? I mean, that's it. Well, what if I go to negative 300? Yeah, I have a negative light now. It sucks light out of the scene, so there you go. Negative values. Let me take a more tame value, like 120. Yeah. That's a negative light. It's casting negative shadows. It's crazy. Anyway. Okay. So let's do another technique. So we're going to delete this. We're going to add in another cube. Okay. We're going to do the same thing where we hit U. We're going to reset SX to get this down here. Then just S to scale it. Now I'm only going to put this on one number because I don't actually care about the individual faces, because you're going to arrange it the same way you did before, but you don't need to see me do that in order to get this technique down. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stay in tab mode. I'm going to hit subdivide. I'm going to subdivide a lot. I'm going to go and say subdivide maybe. Actually, before I do that, first I'm going to actually do the beveling. So let's get out of that subdivision. So now we're going to Control V, and maybe you want it a lot smoother. I don't know. Okay, and then we're going to make like Control R, we're going to go 5 cuts. We're going to go 5 more cuts. That just makes it a little easier to do some subdivision later. Here, 5 cuts. Okay. And then we're going to subdivide. And then we're going to subdivide. Okay. And then we're going to come over here and hit Control 2, which gives us more subdivision. And then we're going to add a displace modifier. So that is over on Deform, Displace. We're going to hit New. I'm going to call this Displace. I'm going to go from Local to UV. Go down here to the Textures tab. Image Remove is what we do want. We want the D6 numbers. Now, you're going to want to modify this. So first, I'm going to bring the strength of this down a lot. So we're going to bring it to like 0.2. Okay. Then mid-level, we're going to actually bring it to 1. So it's the same size as our original cube. And actually, we're going to reduce the strength on this even more. So maybe 0.5. Maybe you want them that shallow. I don't know. So if we increase this number here, it'll make it much harder for the computer, but it'll also increase the resolution on these 5s. So set this as high as your computer can handle, but we're going to show what the disadvantage is on this one. So this is very fast, and you can get pretty good looking results pretty quickly, and it will always match very closely with the numbers that you actually put in here, even if they have fancy curves or whatnot. But again, you're going to have to apply all these modifiers. So when I apply them, and I go over here and hit Tab, I've got an extremely dense mesh. This is a little on the crazy side. And then we're going to have to triangulate it. So come over here, and I'm going to triangulate. And I apply. So now this is ready for you to 3D print, but also it's an extremely dense mesh. So if you're okay with your computer having to process this dense of a mesh, this technique can work really well. If you're not, or if you want the additional freedom that to change things that using the cutting technique can give you, then you might want to use the cutting technique. And remember, if you're going to use either technique before you do this, unlike what I just did, you're going to have to arrange your UVs first. But yeah, that's 2 relatively simple ways to get numbers embossed on a die. Like I said, I'm not going over how you would add a different polyhedra. If you don't know how to add different polyhedra, I would suggest looking elsewhere, because that's not something I'm going to tell you. But there you go. I hope that this was helpful to anyone who watches it, especially to Science Side Up. So Maddie, you're welcome.